Hey everyone, this is the Black Manga Creator here with another video for Manga Monday. So if you're having a crappy Monday, you had to go back to work and you hate work, or you had to see somebody and you didn't want to see somebody for whatever reason, I don't know. Whatever the bad thing is, just know that this video was here for you, the fans, and hopefully you enjoy it. This is basically going to be a review of Robot Laserbeam. All the way up to chapter 18. So it's basically going to be a series review. Me, giving my thoughts about like how I feel about characters, whether the story is interesting, the art, things like that. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to be notified for more content. And follow me on Twitter. Find me on Facebook. You'll see the links in the description box below for all of those things. Just remember, if you want to see more of this stuff, and if you want to get in contact with me, if you have thoughts about this manga, other manga, this like certain anime, comics, whatever the case may be, if you want to shout out, something that you want me to review, I'll review it. Just let me know. I've already got a list of reviews that I'm gonna do from people that have given me that have given me that have tweeted me. So if you want to tweet me, tweet me. So basically, so far, I'm really loving the series. I think that there have been a lot of first chapter sort of impressions and reviews, and then people sort of haven't really kind of picked up after that. And to me, that's kind of I dislike reviews like that, because it sort of says that, oh, okay, I can tell all I need to know from one chapter, and whether or not I'll continue with the series or not, or whatever. And I think for manga, and really anything, a book, anything like that, that's sort of kind of really stupid kind of way of looking at how you're gonna choose to read, and will it continue to read whatever it is that you're gonna read? It's kind of ridiculous. If I decided that on any of the manga that I love, I probably would have stopped reading those manga, and same with the comics, same with the novels that I love, same with certain anime that I love. So I mean, yeah, I get it. Some first impressions are so bad that they really put you off, but at least read the second and third chapters of whatever it is that you're looking at. At least watch the second and third episodes of whatever it is that you're looking at. Those kind of reviews, that I see all over, they're very impactful. And I think they do a disservice to a manga like Robot Laserbeam, or a manga, let's say Dr. Stone, or Haikyuu, or whatever. Anything that or Promised Neverland, anything that you think is kind of whatever at the first read around, but then you realize that when you keep reading, it's very good. Robot Laserbeam is the perfect case of a manga where the first chapter is kind of I'm feeling out, maybe I'm not really feeling it. But when you get into the second chapter and the third chapter, it just keeps ramping up. It keeps picking up, and it gets really, really good. You really sort of connect with the characters. You connect with the sport, oddly enough. You're interested in seeing where the story is going to go. And I think they set that up really well. So in terms of the protagonist, Robot's a great protagonist. He's the type of character that I think Weekly Shonen Jump really needed. Because for a long time, we've had those, kind of generic Weekly Shonen Jump protagonists who are just kind of hell, if I just work hard enough, and I'm happy-go-lucky, and blah, 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 I'll be, successful, and I'm going to attain the goal that I want to obtain, and, life will be pretty fun, and blah, blah, blah. And, that's cool and all, but, I think, there's very much so a new guard of Weekly Shonen Jump protagonists that I personally love. I love Hinata from Haikyuu. He's kind of in that mold, but not necessarily, because I think there are certain ways in which he gets a lot of character development. And Hinata, Shoyo from Haikyuu, Senku from Dr. Stone, right? Emma and Ray from The Promised Neverland, and Robot from Robot Laserbeam. These characters, they're way more fleshed out than your average Weekly Shonen Jump character. They can be straightforward, but they really push the boundaries of what Weekly Shonen Jump has sort of set up in the last like 2 decades or so. You know what I mean? So I think that like I'm really enjoying that, and Robot's a great protagonist. And probably the biggest reason is because like it's very clear that like if he's not just a disinterested like kid who doesn't really care about anything or anything like that, like it's very clear that like to me like he might be on the autistic spectrum. And like that's important because like if you're going to like write stories and you're going to try to make stories that really sort of break the mold and you want people to read your stuff in 2017, like you gotta push, man. Like you can't be writing like Naruto or Bleach like anywhere. Like you can't write those kind of stories anymore. Like you need to have characters that like really really develop, that really have complex layers to them. And Robot's a character like that because like when you're reading Robot Laserbeam, like at least for me, like when I'm reading Robot Laserbeam, I look at Robot and I'm like, yo, like this guy is like literally learning how to feel about particular things. You know what I mean? Like it's not like he just naturally understands like in a at a basic level, right? Like how to like conceptualize like certain feelings and things like that, right? Like it's not that he can't feel or anything like that. It's just that like there haven't been things necessarily that have like really pushed him to like have like a passion or a desire to like want to engage in particular activities or whatever. So like as we're watching Robot, right? Like it's not that we're just that we're watching sort of like a generic shonen character like progress, right? Like we're watching a very like I think to me like a complex Shonen Jump character develop as like a person. You know what I mean? Like it's not just about golf. Whenever we sort of go from chapter to chapter, there's always things that he's picking up, right? There's sort of like like every sort of autistic individual is different, right? And hence the spectrum, right? And hence like humanity and personalities and things like that. But with Robot, it's like every chapter he's always picking things up. He's always sort of picking up these little kind of like little things of information, like bits of information, right? To sort of like store away so that he can kind of process like the goings-ons like around him, right? And like, but there are instances where it's very clear that like he's experiencing something that he's never experienced before, and like I'll get into that in terms of the art later, but like the art really like sort of portrays that, like the writing portrays that, the way that he describes feeling, right? Like you don't really see that a lot of time, like in Weekly Shonen Jump manga, where a character is really like analyzing his feelings at the moment that he's feeling them, like in like a complex sort of like and like interesting way. Usually it's just like, oh, I'm so excited, blah, 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 like whatever. But like this is like, whoa, like is this what it means to like be passionate? Is this what it means to love something? Is this what it means to desire? Like that's like good stuff, like right off the bat. You know what I mean? So I love like him as a protagonist. I also love his friend Tomoya. Like he's like a great character. Like usually like if you read something like another sports manga, I'm thinking of like the Prince of Tennis. Like he'd be like a Horyokun, you know what I mean? Like, he'd be like the guy with like 2 years of tennis experience that gets no development at all and is simply just there for comedic value. But like Tomoya is like clearly like a friend that understands like Robot's eccentric traits, right? And he also, and I think he has an idea that maybe he's that Robot is autistic, but he might not necessarily know like what it means to be autistic or even like the term like autistic, right? So, but he's just being a good friend. Like he's just being a guy that's like, okay, I'm gonna like hang around, like I'm gonna hang out with Robo, and I'm gonna like try to get him into things and things like that, and I'm gonna look out for him and all that, and like that's how you're supposed to be a friend, like generally, right? It's not like like he doesn't like he feels sorry for like Robot or anything like that necessarily. Maybe at first, because like you always kind of feel sorry for someone that's being bullied or whatever, right? But clearly they're friends, and clearly Robot cares about Tomoya, and like that's great because like clearly there was a point where he sort of understood what it meant, like he started to understand what it means to care for someone, and I think the way that they portray his sort of processing those feelings, as opposed to just like, oh, like he has the feelings and like that's it. No, it's like this is a complex individual that not only, you know, can feel, that has emotions, but he also needs to process those emotions in particular ways in order to express how he's feeling about them. Like, that's like good writing for a Weekly Shonen Jump sports manga. You know what I mean? Like, good stuff, quality stuff. In terms of the rival, I think the rival's, you know, Miura, like, he's doing what he needs to do, right? Because, like, the thing that I love is, like, he's sort of like a catalyst for Robot. It's not like, you know, we're necessarily supposed to care about Miura at this point. And that's fine because, like, he's a prodigy, and this manga is full of prodigies. So, you know, in some ways, it really sort of reminds you of kind of, like, for me, like, the way Prince of Tennis, and, like, any sports manga really has, like, characters who are prodigies, and they develop. And that's why, like, when I hear, like, criticism, like, oh, like, Robot's too talented, you know, like, maybe, like, the manga's gonna have issues portraying that. But it's like, he wrote Kuroko no Basket, and, like, you know, he didn't have an issue, like, developing characters in that manga, and there were a bunch of prodigies in that manga. In fact, that manga's premise was that, like, all these prodigies were, like, you know, vying to become the best. So it's like, so it's one of those things, like, criticisms that, like, to me is kind of dumb, because it's like, he's already, like, the manga has already proven that he can write us, you know, a great sports manga about people, you know, who just happen to be, like, really, really great at whatever it is that they do, you know. So I'm not worried about criticism like that, because, like, when you're reading about Laserbeam, like, you see that, like, he is not only, like, a prodigy, but it's very clear that, like, his prodigious talent comes from, like, his, like, sort of, like, intense focus, you know, right, and ability to, like, maintain like a certain level of perfection or whatever. So, you know, that just means that, like, yeah, like, he has to learn, and, like, he, you know, and he does generally learn pretty quickly because he can focus so well. But it doesn't mean that, like, he's not going to have, like, slip-ups or trip-ups, that he's not going to struggle, because he's clearly struggled, right? There have been moments where, like, he struggled so much, like, when he, like, his first sort of match against, like, his rival, right? Like, he struggled so much that, like, I mean, he just flat out lost. Like, it was very clear that he lost. But in that way, like, you know, character development happens and things of that nature happen. So I don't think I'm going to have a problem with this manga in terms of, like, character development, in terms of Robot getting better, in terms of Robot being too good or anything like that. Because everyone, like, most of the people, most of the characters that matter in this manga are all really good already. So it's one of those things where it's like, this is a manga about, like, you know, yeah, you're great, but, like, how do you improve? How do you get better? How do you develop characters that are already sort of, that have already progressed to a level that makes it difficult to, right, like, progress them and develop them? That's the interesting, right? That's the interesting thing. That's what draws you in, right? Like, you know, we've already seen, like, a bunch of characters, like, who are, you know, who might have, like, a no prodigious talents or anything like that, but, like, you know, through sheer willpower, you know, can get through whatever challenges that face them. But, like, this is a character, like, but there are characters in this manga who are very talented, and so the key here is to say, like, oh, well, how's this manga gonna make them better, and not only as golfers, but as people. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I think the manga has already done a really good job of, like, showing bits and pieces of, you know, like, how he's going to do that. So in terms of, sort of, like, the art, like, I think the art is probably one of the best things about, the manga. And I think, like, generally that's so for sports manga. Like, it's very difficult to have a to do a sports manga as a manga and not be, like, a fantastic artist. Like, you will probably, like, that manga will probably fail if the art is awful. You know what I mean? Like, it's just really difficult. So the art, you know, you kind of expect that the art is going to be great, that it's going to be expressive in the ways that it's supposed to be for sports manga, and, you know, all around it's great stuff. There were a few key points that, like, really kind of, like, at least for me, they really kind of, like, knocked my socks off, and I kind of have to sit back and I'm like, wow, like, I really felt something from that scene, or I really felt something from that panel, and the construction of, like, the page or whatever. So one thing that really works for me is whenever the manga draws Robot just kind of like aloof or whatever, and then there are moments where like his face is like dead serious. You know what I mean? Like there are moments where it's like, excuse me, there are moments where it's like really clear that like, you know, he's feeling something. You know what I mean? Like, and like this is something that like isn't particularly common for Robot. So whenever the panel pops up where it's very clear that Robot's like feeling like a desire to you know, progress or be better or to work harder for something that he loves, like, and in this case it's golf, those panels always really shine. Like the art is impeccable. Robot looks like, you know, like just like a badass. And it's not that he's a badass because like, you know, he's like, you know, a super cool kind of character who just like looks amazing or whatever, anything like that. It's because like you feel his process. You feel his process as he's developing as a character through his like stares, through the facial expressions, things like that. And you know, the mangaka just does a great job of like portraying that. There are also sort of moments where, excuse me again, but like characters that like I'm trying to think of like I think his name is like Suzaku, whatever. The guy who's like clearly like obsessed with Miura, and he's also just obsessed with like, you know, strong like golfers, right? And you know, he's very much so in the vein of like a Hisoka or a Toguro, characters that are just like, man, like, you know, like they're just like attracted to strong, like, you know, generally like fighters, right? Athletes, whatever. So I think like he's a great sort of character. And one thing that I really love about his introduction is the sort of instance, I believe it's chapter 13. But in chapter 13, if you look back, there's a point where like the panels right continue to sort of like progress as he's about to be introduced, and the tension rises in the atmosphere. But like behind the panels, in that sort of like gutter space, right, in the space like between the panels, are like these like, you know, these little sort of like blotches, and those blotches usually appear in like shonen manga whenever like the air like around like a certain like atmosphere gets really tense, and like that continues for pages. That's like a point where like the art is like, yo, like it's an instance where it's like not only do you appreciate the manga, but you appreciate like the assistants that are working under him, things like that. Like that's just good stuff, you know, like subtle stuff that really builds a narrative and just really builds a character. So in terms of something like golf, I think like you know, it's a pretty good sport to sort of try to like, you know, win back like whatever notoriety you had for something like a Kuroko no Basket, right? Like, you know, basketball, I wouldn't say it's an easy like sport to like do for a manga. I mean, like, yeah, we've had Slam Dunk, right? And now, you know, and Kuroko no Basket, but like golf is like, I mean, like I said, like I think like there have been like, you know, really whatever kind of golf manga. Like I feel like there's only been like one golf manga that I know of. Like, and that's just because like I scrolled through like a manga site or whatever, you know, and just kind of happened upon it. But I didn't really have any interest like to read it or whatever. But, you know, I know that Weekly Shonen Jump is going to entertain me at the very least. So I said, okay, let me pick this up. And like I love it. And it's also because like I have a golf sort of background in like sort of like my sports viewership or whatever. Like, you know, I grew up playing like Mario Golf on the N64, the GameCube, and you know, like, right, and I feel like it came out on the Wii, you know, but like I grew up with that, like playing with my brothers, all of that. Grew up watching golf as a result of it. So like I know the rules of golf, I know the terrain, like I know like, you know, certain technique and things like that. You know, and it helps, you know, and it only helps more that my father-in-law is a huge golf fanatic. So, you know, like the golf aspect of it, at least for me, is like really great because like I think like that's how you show your ingenuity. That's how you show, you know, your skills, not only as a writer but as an artist. Like, can you take something that is like, you know, seen as very much so mundane to a lot of people that read manga, at least in America, like, and make them interesting. And this manga's done a great job at that. I mean, like, it's good stuff, man. I can't recommend it enough. I think that, like, you know, like I said, like, the characters are, like, interesting. Like, the protagonist is great. Like, he breaks the mold, and I think, like, at least for a weekly Shonen Jump manga, he breaks the mold. I think the art is fantastic. It does what it needs to do. It explains golf in a way that, like, is very clear. And it does things like tension and tenacity and passion very well. It portrays that. And, you know, it's just all good stuff. The golf aspect is great. You know, so that's basically my review for Robot Laserbeam. Now I can basically, like, do that review every Thursday. So look out for that. But like I said, I don't want this video to be, like, you know, 30 minutes long or anything like that. Because, like, I want you guys to watch, like, you know, I want you guys to watch the whole video. I want you guys to enjoy the whole video. So, like, comment, and subscribe if you want to hear about more content. Follow me on Twitter if you want to hear about more content. And just generally want to, like, excuse me. And just generally if you want to, like, you know, get into contact with me or whatever. And, you know, find me on Facebook. You know, because that's where I'm going to be trying to, like, do, like, conversations and things of that nature. You know, live conversations, stuff like that. But I might end up doing live streams too. So look out for that. So, this is the Black Manga Critic, signing out on Manga Monday.